Hi, I'm Kristen Howerton. I pen the blog RageAgainsttheMiniva, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Vanguard University. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the church's response to the LGBT community and how we can better respond and how we can better love that community. One of the things that I feel is very important for our church in this century to do is to stop breaking fellowship with each other over the issue of homosexuality. I think that there has been a lot of arguing and there has been a wide range of Christian takes on scripture and how it relates to homosexuality. And I think the bottom line is people are changing their views on this. People are reading scripture differently. We're seeing a pretty big difference between Christians who are over 40 and how they view this topic versus Christians who are under 40. And the bottom line is this may be an issue that we really never come to agreement on. This may be an issue that Christians argue about for years and years to come. But the truth is there have always been different interpretations of scripture. We as Christians have fought over how many times to have communion. We've fought over whether or not water baptism is required for salvation. We have fought over predestination. There are many, many issues that Christians take different takes on in how they read the scripture, and we have yet somehow managed through these other issues to still acknowledge other Christians, to still be in community with other Christians, to not excommunicate other Christians. And I think with this issue, we're really going to have to find some unity within it and some allowance that we're going to have different takes on scripture and whether or not we view homosexuality as a sin. I also think it's really important for the Christian church to stop setting ourselves at the forefront of legal discrimination. What frustrates me about the marriage equality issue is that Christians feel so comfortable invoking the Bible in talking about what's really a government matter. And so I think it's important for Christians to understand that you can still hold for yourself and within your church traditional views. You can still hold that you believe that homosexuality is a sin, but that personal belief does not require you to then go and support legislation that promotes discrimination for gay people wanting to be married. Those are two completely separate things. And our personal beliefs, generally speaking, our personal beliefs in terms of what we view as sin is not something that we would decide to legislate on other people. Our legislation certainly sometimes does match up with things that we view ethically and morally, for example, murder. But in the case of something that does not really affect us, that does not take away the rights of other people, I do think that Christians need to pull back a little bit from trying to ensure that gay people cannot be married, that gay people cannot adopt children, because when we do that, what we're really saying is, I am going to take my moral views and my view of scripture and I'm going to impose them on people who may or may not even believe in God or call themselves a Christian. And we've always avoided doing that. We've never gone for legislation that would somehow disallow someone who wasn't married to keep their own child. We've never gone after legislation that would prohibit people legally from having sex before marriage. And so, I think that there is a line that we have crossed on this one in trying to prohibit gay people from being married that moves out of personal belief and into discrimination. The truth is the relevance of your biblical beliefs in regards to marriage equality really are two separate things. And I think that we've done a disservice by making this kind of a hallmark issue that we're fighting for. And I think that there is a lot of hurt in the LGBT community towards Christians, and rightly so. I think the third thing we really need to be aware of is that we have got to welcome the LGBT community into church. As I mentioned, there is a lot of hurt, and I think that there is a lot of perceived rejection. And so we need our churches to be welcoming places for everyone, without caveats, without limits, without a talk about how things need to change if they need to stay. And if we as a church are not able to welcome LGBT members, then we certainly need to understand the churches in our community that will, because there are open and affirming and inclusive communities of faith, and they are growing every day. And if you have someone come to your church and they don't feel welcome and feel like they can't worship there, rather than sending them out and saying there's not a place for you to worship if you don't change, or there's not a place for you to volunteer or be on in any role of leadership, then you need to help that person find a faith community, because we are seeing LGBT people leave the church en masse because they're not being welcomed. The fourth thing I think we need to do is that we need to stop elevating this as a sin that is above all sins. You know, we as a church have really come out strong on this issue, and yet we are not nearly as vocal about issues of pride, about issues of greed, about issues of gluttony, about any other sin issue that we see in the scripture as being clear. And so I think for people who view homosexuality as a sin, this needs to be seen the same way we would look at other sins. We need to stop acting like this is something that is setting people apart, because that is not how we behave towards other things that people might be struggling with. The last thing is, I think that we need to change our views on family values. When we talk about family values, we're often almost equating that with being against gay people being able to be married, or being against gay people being able to adopt. But the truth is, those two things, those are pro-family. It is pro-family when two gay people can be married. It is pro-family when a child who is sitting in the foster care system and looking for a family gets two parents or one parent. That is pro-family. So we need to stop pretending that we're being pro-family when we are trying to keep people out of families. And I know for me, if one of my children were LGBT, I would certainly want them to be married. I would certainly want them to be in a lifelong relationship that was affirming. I would certainly want them to be able to adopt a child, able to be parents. That is pro-family. If my children were gay, I would want them to be involved in a family, and I would want a church that would welcome them as a family. So I do think we need to change this verbiage when we talk about being pro-family, and really think about what that means. My hope really is for our church that we can begin to have more unity on this issue, that we can start to heal some of the rifts that we have, because there are still so many Christians within the LGBT community. And I really think it's time for us to, put down the battle axes on this issue, to come together as Christians, to acknowledge that we have different views on this, and to figure out how we can welcome gay and lesbian people into our church.